Hello, it's story time once again, and we're continuing our story through the Bible, and we're looking at Jacob and sons, and we're today going to be concentrating on his son Joseph. So let me build up the picture board for us. This is Jacob now. He's got older, and remember that Jacob's name was changed to Israel. So I should call him Jacob, but I might call him Israel as well. So just remember that his name was changed to Israel. So he had 12 sons altogether, didn't he? And one daughter. So let's put the sons over here. Remember, as we look at the picture board, we can see that they lived in tents in the land of Israel. That's what it's called today. These are 10 of Jacob's sons. They're the older ones. And they were shepherds, actually. They looked after donkeys. No, caught you out. They looked after sheep. That's right. So here's the sheep. And let's put this little one. There he is, over there. And here's Jacob's daughter. Her name was Dinah, remember? And this is Joseph. And we're going to put Joseph's other brother, his younger brother, who was called Benjamin, over this side. Now, it tells us in the Bible that Jacob made Joseph his favourite son. Was that good? No, it wasn't good. Why did he make Joseph his favourite son? Can you remember? Yep, it was because Rachel was his favourite wife. And Rachel couldn't have children for many years. So when Joseph was born, Jacob loved him more than the others, it would seem. That's not good. So if you ever have children, when you grow up, don't have favourites, but love them all the same, because it is not a good situation. But this is the reality of what it was like at that time. And so we're going to put Joseph over here now, because it tells us that Joseph was given this amazing coat by his dad. A coat of many colours, or a coat with long sleeves. A coat that meant that he didn't do any of the work. In fact, he used to go backwards and forwards, checking up on his brothers who were shepherds, and then bringing back reports to his dad. And sometimes he would bring back a bad report to his dad. So actually, he probably didn't do himself any favours. He knew he was the favourite, and his brothers hated him. They were angry, they didn't like him, they were resentful of him. So from jealousy to hate to resentment to wanting to do away with Joseph. It's never good to be jealous, because you know what? Jealousy puts us on a road that leads to lots of bad things. Jealousy always leads to things that are not good. So one day the Bible tells us that Joseph, in his amazing coat of many colours, he went off and pretended that they're quite a long way away, actually, so Dad's not seeing what's going on, neither are the others, brothers and sister here. Joseph goes to see his brothers, and his brothers see him from a distance, and they say to one another, here comes Joseph. Now, I need to tell you something that Joseph had said to his brothers that made them even more angry. It tells us that God gave Joseph 2 dreams. Would you like to know what those dreams were? Well, these are the dreams. In fact, let me tell it to you as Joseph told his brothers one day. He said to his brothers, hey guys, last night I had a dream. And they probably said, okay, tell us a dream. And he said, in my dream, we were all in the field collecting in the corn. Okay, so we all had a bundle of corn. We'll put the bundles of corn up here. Remember, there are 12 brothers altogether, 12 sons of Jacob. He said we were all collecting the corn in, and all of a sudden, in my dream, he said my bundle of corn went into the middle, and all of yours bowed down to mine. Now, I expect Joseph really enjoyed telling his brothers that dream. I wonder what he thought. I think he probably thought, one day, my brothers are going to bow down to me. I'm going to be more important than they are when I grow up. Well, he had another dream as well. And he said to his brothers, and I had another dream. And you know what? In this dream, I saw this, let's put it over here, the sun. And I saw the moon. And I also saw 11 stars. 11. Think of how many brothers he had. I wonder if the sun and the moon represented his mum and his dad. By now, actually, his mum had died. But in the dream, he saw the sun and the moon. Let's pretend that I'm putting up here 11 stars. And Joseph said, he said, all of them were bowing down to me. Well, his brothers were angry at that. And they said to him, will you rule over us? And they hated him all the more. Now, because of these dreams and because of the way Dad treated him as a favourite, when Joseph went to see them one day, they started to talk among themselves. They saw him from a distance and they said, here comes that dreamer. Now's our opportunity to hurt him. And so they planned amongst themselves that they were going to hurt Joseph. In fact, at least one of them wanted to kill Joseph. That's not good, is it? And so when Joseph came to his brothers, they ripped off his coat. Dad would take off his coat like that. Now I want you to pretend that this is his coat. They ripped off his coat, okay, and they threw Joseph into a pit. All right, there he is in a pit. They threw him in a pit, then they sat down and they started to eat their lunch. I don't know, maybe Joseph bought their lunches, I don't know. But the Bible tells us that at that time there were some travellers who were travelling through the country where they lived and where they were. And one of the brothers had an idea, because at that time there was slavery. Do you know, there is a kind of slavery today that isn't good. But one of the brothers said, I've got an idea. Why don't we sell Joseph to these travellers for money? We can get money for him and we'll never see him again. And so do you know what they did? They pulled Joseph up out of the pit. They went over to the travellers for, I think it was for 30 silver coins. Joseph was sold to some travellers who were going off to another country. Now I want you to guess in a minute what country they were going off to, and I'm going to give you a clue. And so the brothers said to themselves, we'll never see Joseph again. He is now a slave. He's been sold for money. Poor Joseph. This is what the brothers did next. They took Joseph's coat and they took one of their lambs or one of their sheep or goats and they killed it. And they dipped Joseph's coat in the blood of that animal. They then went back to their dad and they said to their dad, they said, Father, look what we found. And they handed Joseph's coat with the blood on it. When Jacob saw Joseph's coat, he knew it was Joseph's coat. He saw the blood. What do you think Jacob thought had happened? Yeah, he thought that Jacob had been killed that Joseph had been killed by a wild animal. And his other sons lied to their dad because they knew what they'd done. Do you know what? Those brothers would carry in their heart and in their mind, they would feel guilty for many, many years. Probably they struggled to even look their dad in the face, in the eye, because they knew that they were lying to him. But Jacob cried and he wept because he thought to himself, Joseph, my favourite son, is dead. And no one could comfort Jacob at that time. But Joseph wasn't dead, actually. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move that away and I'm going to show you a picture of Joseph, you know, as though he's a little bit older now. Okay. And here's a house. Now, what country do you think Joseph was sold as a slave to? Here's a clue. Let's put this up here like that. Can you see what they are? They're pyramids. So what's the name of the country? Egypt. Joseph was sold into Egypt. And he was taken into the marketplace. And just like you go to a shop and buy things, Joseph was sold. And he was sold as a slave to this man here, who lived in this house over here in Egypt. His name is Potiphar. Can you say Potiphar? Brilliant. This is Potiphar. And Potiphar was married to Mrs. Potiphar. We don't actually know what her name was. Here she is. And she lived in the house. Potiphar had a very important job. He was commander of Pharaoh, that's the king of Egypt's army. And so, you know what? He would have been off at work. And so we'll send him off to work. And here is Joseph. All right? Here's Joseph. He's grown up a little bit. You know, he's a handsome young man. He's about 17 years old. If he lived around today, he may still be at college. If he was going to go to university, he's getting ready to go off to university. But this is Joseph. He's a slave and he's working in the house of Potiphar. But he's also good looking. All right? Just like all of you are that are watching this at the moment. Now, something really important the Bible tells us, that God was with Joseph. I think that Joseph got to know God during this time in his life. I think when he lived at home with his brothers and with his dad and with his mum before she died, I think that he knew about his dad's God, the God of heaven, but Joseph got to know God as his own personal friend, as a real person that he loved whilst he was away from home, whilst he was here in Egypt. Now, he could have been really angry about what his brothers did, but he just knew that he wasn't on his own. And it says that God helped him. God helped him to do a good job around the house of Pharaoh. So much so that Pharaoh really liked Joseph. And he put him in charge of the other servants. Because there were servants that were also slave servants, same sort of thing. Joseph was put in charge of everything because Pharaoh trusted him. He looked at him and he saw that he was different. I wonder if he saw God at work in Joseph's life. He may not have understood what that really meant, but one day, Potiphar's wife started to look at Joseph because he was good looking. And she would come up to him and she would say to him, "Hey Joseph, my husband's at work. There's no one around. You come with me." Joseph would say, "No, that's wrong. You're married. In fact, your husband has put me in charge. He trusts me. He's put me in charge of so much. You belong to him. I can't go with you." She kept coming to Joseph. She kept coming to him and saying, "You come with me, you come with me." And Joseph said, "No, that is wrong." One day, there was no one about in the house. The other servants must have been outside. Mrs. Potiphar comes up to him. She grabs hold of Joseph. Joseph runs away. Do you know what? When you are tempted to do wrong, run away. Don't stay there because you might fall into temptation and do wrong. Joseph ran away. She was angry that night when her husband came home from work. Let's put him here. When Potiphar came home, she said to her husband, "Do you know what? That servant, slave that you brought into our family, today he came to me and wanted me to go off with him behind your back." She lied to her husband. Did he believe her? Yeah, he believed her. Joseph had done nothing wrong. In fact, he had done everything right. Potiphar was so angry. He took Joseph and he put him into the prison where the king's prisoners were. Next week, I'm going to tell you what happens next in the exciting story of Joseph. See you next week.